Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to our /IDontWorkHereLady, where you know the deal. Karens mistake regular Joe Schmoes as employees, and the stories get ridiculous. And in today's episode, Karens are forcing people to clean up rotting carcasses, to fire others, one OP almost gets beat up. The entitlement's off the charts today. I can't help but to chuckle at it. So yeah, sit back, grab a drink, and remember guys, this voice should only be on the Dark Fluff YouTube channel. Let's dive in. Before I start telling my story, which happened years ago, I just wanted to say that this is the most insane thing that's ever happened to me. As I mentioned, this happened years and years ago in the summer when my uncle was having his wedding. I was 16 years old at the time, and it was my first time I'd ever worn a suit. Being summer and it being really hot, I took off my suit jacket. So there I was, standing outside this wedding venue, greeting the guests and welcoming relatives and chatting. And here's where things get interesting. So there was this catering service who was outside preparing the food for the wedding. They were all dressed the same, white shirt, black pants, and nice black shoes and a normal belt. The problem was, I looked the exact same. I didn't have anything on me which could possibly tell that I'm different than them. And since I took off my jacket, they couldn't tell either. I'm just standing at the entry welcoming guests, and that's when an employee, I'm assuming the supervisor, approaches me. And he says to me, "Hey, what the F are you doing talking and chatting with the guests? Get to work." I respond, "Do I know you?" He then says, "Don't you just stand there, start moving and do something. The guests are gonna get really angry if the food's not ready on time." Now here's the thing. I thought he was kind of joking about all that stuff, since we look exactly the same. The guy was also old, so I assumed he had a good sense of humor, and I thought he was trying to be funny. Well, 5 minutes go by, and I'm still standing there talking with family members that I haven't seen for a while when the same guy approaches me, and he gently pulls me aside into this empty room. That's when he asked if I wanted to get fired, and he'd do anything to make sure I wouldn't get any money for today, as I'm being completely useless. It was at that moment I realized he wasn't trying to be funny anymore, but dead serious about it. I actually got angry, so I responded in a very angry way, telling him to F off and leave me alone. I also want to add that now, looking back, I could have told him that I wasn't working for the catering service, but again, I did not clue in at the time. I just pull away, and as I'm walking, the guy grabs me by the arm and he threatens to beat me up if I continue disrespecting him. I just start calling for my family members at this point, and I actually screamed help. Of course, everyone starts running towards me. My grandfather comes in the room and he sees the guy, and my grandfather tells him that I wasn't working for him, and now he wouldn't be working for my grandfather anymore too. I don't know what happened to the guy, as we didn't see him around that evening, so I'm assuming his boss sent him home or something. I only wish I got to tell him, "Seems like it's you who won't earn any money today." Yeah, that honestly would have been a huge mic drop moment for OP. But in my opinion, the guy's lucky he only got sent home. Like, imagine threatening and grabbing a random teenager at somebody else's wedding because you were too arrogant to admit you made a mistake. And the craziest part, guys, is OP probably looked more professional than the actual catering supervisor did. Like, somebody fire that man. And speaking of firing, this next Karen demands OP fire a customer, guys. Listen to this post. So before I get into this story, my work attire is a business shirt and tie with black dress pants and black business shoes. The boss doesn't care about the colors of the shirts and ties as long as you look professional. The day this happened, I came into work wearing a pale blue shirt with a dark blue tie. The air conditioning at work's horrible, and it being 35 degrees Celsius outside, 97 Fahrenheit was exhausting. Across the road is a shopping complex, and their air conditioning's great. so I go over there for lunch and I'm looking around while on break to enjoy the coolness. I then enter a retail store and their uniform is a polo shirt and a dark navy blue with the store name on the chest. I'm walking around when I hear some commotion going on. It sounds like a family that's arguing, so I just keep on looking around when I see this lady. She comes from where the commotion was and she looks right at me and she says, "Excuse me." I respond, "Yes." She then says, "Hey, yes, so that employee right over there, yeah, he's no good." I look over to where the lady's pointing, and she's pointing to some guy who, while he had on a shirt similar to the store, there was no store name on the shirt. I say to her, "What do you mean he's no good?" She then says to me, "He doesn't know a damn thing about anything. If you keep hiring people like him, you'd go out of business. I think you should fire him." Hearing that come out of her mouth, I just start chuckling and I say, "Ma'am, I can't fire him. He's clearly not a member of staff as that's not the store uniform." The old lady just looks back at him and then turns back to me. I think she was gonna say something before I continued and said, "Now, if you want to complain, go right ahead, but maybe not to me because I don't work here either." And let me tell you, the look on the old lady's face was a mixture of embarrassment and rage. But at least she had the common sense to walk away. I found her at the customer service desk, possibly complaining to the unfortunate staff member behind the counter. I'm glad she found somebody on the third try, but I hope she cooled down before talking to them. Tonight, I visited my old stomping grounds. I used to work for a sports venue, and there was an event there tonight. I made my first return to the venue in 2 years. I had worked there for 3 years, and I do have a recognizable face, so the likelihood that I would have been seen and spoken to is high. Sure enough, rounding the corner closest to the main entrance, I see many of my old coworkers and even former attendants who wave and smile. It's important to note that they do have a very particular dress code that I certainly wasn't following or wearing any part of. One of the ladies who saw me approached, and she was talking to me for about 15 minutes, just checking in on life over the past 2 years. We went our separate ways, and I found my seats and prepared to enjoy the event. About 20 minutes later, this one woman is standing over me. She's asking a question, and it's the 3rd or 4th time she's asked, and that's when I realized she's talking to me. She says to me, "I said I need assistance. Hello." I respond, "I'm sorry, I didn't know you were speaking to me. Can I help you?" She then says, "There are 2 people in our seats and one of them is refusing to leave. Do something about it." I just respond, "Okay, and I can help you how?" Now, I've definitely done this in the past, but I don't work here anymore, so it's not my responsibility. She then screams and says, make them move." These idiots are saying they can sit where they please, and it's pissing me off. I respond, "Well, ma'am, if you paid for those seats, all you need to do is tell the usher and they'll take care of it." I then pointed to the usher and I said, "Her name is Tammy." And this is where Karen loses it. She says to me, "I approached you, so I expect you to do it. I know who you are. My friends," she then points to people I knew from 2 years ago, "said you work here." That's when I tell her, "No ma'am, I used to work here a couple of years ago, but tonight, I'm just a patron, just like you." She then says, "Well, who's your boss? My friends aren't liars, and are you calling them liars? Are you just being too lazy to do your job?" She then says the words, "Get me your supervisor," to which I respond, "Absolutely." Now, a thing she doesn't know is I own my own business and I work for myself. So I hand her a card with my boss's information on it and she starts calling. The phone rings and I say, "Excuse me, I need to take this." I then take out my phone and I say, "Hello, Karen then realizes what happened and she gets even angrier, saying, "I'm gonna find your boss right now. That's not funny." 10 minutes later, she comes back with my actual old manager and she's explaining the whole situation to him. He's holding in a laugh as she describes the interaction. At the end, he looks her dead in the face and then to me, and he says to me, "You no longer work here as of right now. You're fired." He then asked if that's all the woman needed. She says, "Yes, but I still need those people removed from my seats." The manager then tells her, "Oh, that's not my job, but that usher right over there, Tammy, will be more than happy to help you." You could tell by the look on her face that she was pissed. He just walks away and he texted me laughing. The whole night was a lot more fun after that. So I just had this event happen this morning and I'm still laughing to myself about it. Here's some quick background. I'm a personal shopper for a major retailer in the Midwest. My job's to bring all the customers' orders to our building, which are 2 shipping containers side by side, and then load them into the customers' cars when they arrive. It was just another day, and I was trying to load another order into a small trunk. I was trying to figure out how to load the 15 bags and 2 24-packs of water into the small space when I hear the sound I'm all too familiar with. I'm sure we all know the sound, the high-pitched, nasally tone of, you guessed it, the wild Karen. She says, "Hey, excuse me." I hear the call and I glance up from my real-life game of Tetris to see this woman standing across the parking lot and she's looking over at me. The woman appeared to be in her early 40s, and she was wearing jeans, a purple t-shirt, and under her straw hat, I saw the standard "I want to speak to your manager" haircut. Now, I ignored her the first time as I was busy trying to get the last few bags wedged in, and I couldn't really care about what she wanted as technically she wasn't my customer or even a shopper at my store. The woman was standing in a small city park that was across the parking lot. She once again screams, "Hey!" and this time I stand up straight and I look back at her. She then says to me, "Hey, there's a dead rabbit right over here. I want you to take care of it." Me, somewhat bewildered and confused, responded, "What?" Karen then says, "I said there's a dead rabbit over here. Come get rid of it before it starts stinking." Now, I understood what she was saying, and I hope the information I had to give would shut her down. I respond, that's not store property, that's not my job." At this point, I return inside the containers to retrieve the remaining groceries. When I return to the customer's vehicle, who do I see but Karen at the car? She's standing by the driver's side door. The driver quickly began raising her windows when Karen began again. Karen says to me, "I said to you, there's a dead rabbit behind the rock over there. I reported it to some people here last night, and it's still there. It needs to be taken away right now." I let her know, "Ma'am, that property doesn't belong to this store. I have no authority about that area. It's a city park, and the last I checked, I do not work for them." Karen says, "But I want it gone." I respond, "It's not my job." This is when she says, "Well, can't you just go grab it real quick and toss it out? If you won't do it, who do I call to get it then?" I respond, "I have no idea." At this, Karen storms off mumbling something about calling corporate. The customer and I share a confused look as I close her trunk and I let her know that she's cleared to leave. The customer drives away, and I walk back inside, and I share a hearty laugh with my coworkers, who decided to come out and watch the show. All in all, it raised morale for the rest of the morning. My store manager actually got a call from Karen, and she brought it up during a morning meeting. Listen, why am I not surprised she called in, guys? Like, some people don't get the hint. Like, if you wanted that carcass removed so badly, Karen, you should do it. It's just baffling how some people just see a uniform on someone and they literally think that that person can be ordered around to do anything. So over the last week, my husband and I both had to deal with some obnoxious Karens. My husband's experience happened first over the weekend. My husband works for a contractor's company, and he was working at a large local hospital doing some renovations and upgrades. He was in the cafeteria waiting for two other guys so they could get to work, and was very clearly wearing his company shirt that in large white letters says the company's name. He was also wearing a badge with his face and company name on it, and he had tools on a tool belt. Now, I wasn't there, so this is how my husband told me it happened, which was backed by his two coworkers who came in when it got good. So Karen basically comes up to my husband and she says, "Excuse me, I want someone to go get me food from," she then names some restaurant. My husband tells her, "I'm sorry, but I don't think they have that here." He then goes back to playing a game on his phone or something. All he remembers is he went back to his phone. Karen then says to him, "So, aren't you gonna go get it?" My husband tells her, "No, I'm waiting for my guys to start work, I'm sorry." It's at this point, Karen shoves her leg into my husband's face and she says, "Well, I'm a patient here and you have to take care of me. I want food from that place, and while you're at it, you need to find someone who isn't useless, who knows how to put the band on my wrist, not my leg." My husband tells her, "I don't work for the hospital. The registration desk is down the hall. Maybe they can help. My guys are here, so I'm gonna start to go to work. Have a nice day." She then grabs my husband's arm in full view of the coworkers who had just come up. She then says, "I know you work here, so go get me some food." My husband tells her, "Ma'am, I do not work here, so please let go of my arm." My husband's also careful not to jerk away in case she falls since it's a hospital. He made sure he was steady and he pulls his arm away and he starts walking towards the elevators. And that's when Karen shouts, "Get back here and get me whoever's in charge of you. I need to have you fired." This is when my husband tells her, "I'm in charge of my guys today and we're leaving." It wasn't that exciting, and he didn't see her for the rest of the day, but he got hell from his coworkers about it. Now with my experience, which was yesterday, I work in an office building which shares about 20 separate offices with other companies. I have one near the end of the hall on the second floor by a door that's always locked. My coworker's office is down the hall, so my door's normally open for people coming to get checks or dropping off contracts and checks. Further down the hall is a few other offices, one of which is a place that does lab tests to be sent to an independent lab. Earlier yesterday, I hear the owner of that office on the phone with someone yelling at them to calm down and be respectful or he wouldn't help her. I ignored most of it because it's not my business. Fast forward to yesterday afternoon, and somebody opens the door on the opposite end from me and starts stomping down the hall. There are clear signs on the door and even arrows to point you to the specific office you need, and an elevator that has office numbers. Mine's 12 and the other 16, for instance. The stomping continues, and this is when some lady who's coughing up a storm barrels into my office. She opens the door so hard, it ends up slamming the door into the wall. She then screams at me saying, "I've never been spoken to so rudely in my life. How dare you speak to me that way earlier?" Now keep in mind, the person she spoke to earlier was a guy with a deep voice in his 60s. I'm in my 20s and I'm obviously pregnant. I'd say to her, "Excuse me, ma'am, but I'm gonna need you to step out of my office and speak calmly or I will not help you." She screams, "How dare you? I will not leave." She then moves towards me, and that's when I tell her, "If you come any closer, I will call the police, and I will defend myself, so back up." She then grumbles, but she takes a step back until she's in the doorway. She then says to me, "You sent me to a place for blah 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 testing. It had a bunch of people in the waiting room and they were sick. And now I'm sick because you sent me there. What are you gonna do for me?" This is when I tell her, "You're in the wrong office. It's down the hall in suite 16. I don't work." She then stops me and says, "Yes, you do. I talked to you earlier, bitch." I respond, "No, you didn't, and I don't work for them. I work for XYZ Carpenter Office. Read the sign. Now get out right now before I call the police." At this point, the owner of my company came back and came to hear what the commotion was about. She came up and heard the police bit, and she decided to step in. The owner says, "Excuse me, but why are you harassing my employee?" This is when Karen says she yelled at me over the phone. The owner says, "I don't think she did. You need to leave now or I will be calling police." Karen says, "You wouldn't dare." The owner looks at me and she says, "Go ahead and call. I'll stay right here until they get here." I start dialing the number into my phone, and that's when Karen ran down the hall and out the door. I told the other office about it, and they had all the information they need, and they'll take care of it with a report. Some people are a bit too unhinged, I tell you. Like storming into the wrong office, screaming at a pregnant employee, refusing to leave, and then still insisting she was right is absolutely unhinged behavior, guys. And again, I read a lot of these stories, and sometimes I'm still shocked that some people would rather get police involved than admit when they opened the wrong door or called the wrong person. So as an avid reader and listener, I never knew that this could happen to me, as our country's culture tends to lean on the conservative and hospitality side. First, a brief background about my occupation. I am a 30-year-old male, and my dad owns a small engineering business, which specializes on repairs, fabrication, and supply of mechanical, electrical, and metalworks alike. Most of our clients are food manufacturing plants within the province. Anyways, it's a typical Thursday morning when a client called me to pick up a machine for repairs. When I arrive at the plant, I was asked by security to wait outside the loading bay as they page the engineer that's assigned with the said machine. While waiting for the supervisor, I hear a loud, "Hey," and this came from a guy in his late 50s to early 60s maybe, who was also at the loading bay. I paid no attention to him as I knew he was a contractor/supplier just like me, and I thought he was just shouting at the guys working there. The guy gets my attention by shouting, "Hey, kid." So I approached him and I asked, "What's up?" The guy was somehow startled by my disinterested tone, and he asked why I wasn't doing my job. I just told him, "Oh, I don't work here, I'm just waiting on..." He then shouts, "Kid, aren't you ashamed that you're just standing here while your coworkers are unloading those boxes?" Again, I reiterated that I don't work here. Well, to be fair, I think he mistook me as one of the workers, as I, for one, was wearing loose, old clothing. And being on a tropical country, the climate tends to get warm and humid, which is what the workers kind of wear. Going back, the guy just blabbered how rude kids are nowadays and downright disrespectful to the older generation by talking back and stuff. Typical Asian culture. I didn't pay attention to him anymore, and that's when the guy starts lecturing me about knowing my place and how rude it is to talk back to elders. I again just ignore him as I want to avoid any conflict within the client's premises. After the guy's TED Talk, he said the magic word that gave me an idea on how to shut him down for good. He said to me, "I will report you to your manager for disrespecting an essential supplier and not doing your job when you're told to." This is when I calmly got my wallet and I didn't say anything. The guy looked at me confused as hell, and this is when I hand him my business card. I told him, "If you want to complain, I'm the manager. Also, I'm not a kid. I'm 30 and I own my own business." I just nodded at him and I told him, "Have a nice day." The guy's face turned bright red, but he didn't say a thing. I did hear some giggling and whispers between the employees that were unloading the boxes. I just went back to where I was originally standing, and I waited for the client's engineer in peace. You know that silence afterward must have been beautiful for OP, not to mention awkward for the old guy. Like, imagine seeing that guy's face when he realized he was lecturing the owner of an entirely different company the whole time. Just the thought of it makes me smile, guys, because some people need to mind their business. I don't know how I never thought to share this one here before, but here goes. Last year, I took a trip to New York City in late January, and I had a very early flight back home to California. So even though I ate on the plane and all, due to the time zone shifts, by the time I got home, I was still pretty hungry, and having been awake since 2 a.m. local time, I was too tired to put anything together. So I ordered from my favorite pizza place, and I got in the car to go pick up my order, which is usually only a 10-minute drive each way. A couple of blocks from the pizza place, there was some kind of weird obstruction in traffic. I tried to get a look at it, but genuinely, I couldn't tell what was going on. It seemed like either somebody was pulled over or kind of beefing it by having their car halfway out in the street while parked by the curb. It seemed like it could have started moving again or not. I genuinely had no idea. All I knew was my lane wasn't moving at all at the moment, and I was hungry and tired, so I had to do something. Traffic in the next lane is moving pretty slowly due to people shifting from my blocked up lane. So I figure I have an opportunity. I look in my driver's side mirror and I see a pickup that's kind of close but moving very slowly. So I flip my turn signal and turn in. Now, I thought I had the room to move in smoothly without problems, but the guy still had to brake fast and he honked at me. And you know what? That's fair. My bad, I misjudged it. But nobody was hurt, no accidents occurred, and within seconds, we were both moving along. And I thought that was the end of that. Well, I get to the pizza place 2 minutes later and I park. And I stop to check a message on my phone before getting out of the car. When I do, there's a very angry man outside the front door of the shop who begins yelling at me. I see the guy's truck parked in the same lot now, and I gotta say, I didn't know they made pickup trucks that big. The thing was the most massive vehicle I've ever seen that still somehow fit in a regular spot in a parking lot. And let me tell you, this dude's going off. He's screaming his effing head off, how I cut him off in traffic, and the guy's making violent threats. At this point, I'm just tired. I don't know how to react to this because I'm not scared of him in the moment. I'm 6'5", and this dude is like 5'6" tops. But my brain doesn't really know how to process him being all hyper and going, I'm out here killing mother effers left and right, you don't even know. And again, I did cut him off. It was my bad. So I try to apologize, and then the guy's heading inside the pizza place, and internally, I'm like, what are the odds that we were going to the same spot? Even with the way he's acting, I guess it's only fair that I let him get his pizza first. Maybe that will calm him down. But then, when I step inside after him, he's yelling at the whole staff. It takes me a moment to process it all, but he's screaming at them about me, saying that their stupid delivery boy cut him off in traffic, blah blah blah. And y'all, the staff all wear normal restaurant clothes with a restaurant branded shirt. I'm a man in his 30s wearing a graphic tee, fire engine red suspenders, and a red newsboy hat that people constantly say makes me look like Mario with my mustache. And when I finally do process it, my mood changes a bit, as it's one thing to yell at me for an F-up that I made, even if the reaction is insanely disproportionate. But now that I realized he's not an actual customer, but the guy followed me here, and he's now making all these other folks uncomfortable, I now get to be mad. I don't scream or anything, but I do raise my voice, and I tell him very firmly I do not work here. The guy then turns to me for a second, and he's stunned by this new information. But then, he manages to recover by stammering, well, you look like the kind of clown who would work here. And with that, he starts to raise his voice and is raving again. And at this point, I couldn't even tell you what about. I have no clue how this is gonna go. I've dealt with aggressive people before, but never on this level. Like, the dude's effing unhinged, and a part of me is beginning to worry that this is the kind of guy who might have a weapon on him. Luckily, 2 cops happened to be eating in the dining room, and they came to the front to see what the commotion was. They asked the staff if they wanted the guy to be there. They said no, and they forced him to leave. There was no arrest, I didn't give a statement or anything, but once the situation calmed down, I start to get worried about the aftermath. I felt that there was a good chance that once I had my pizza, that this guy would be waiting outside for me again. Thankfully, the guy was gone, which I could tell from the absence of his insanely large automobile. I just found myself hoping that that nutjob didn't have a family to bring all that anger home to. I got home and enjoyed my pizza. I haven't seen him or his oversized truck since, so I can only hope that the guy was passing through town and doesn't really live here. Whatever the case, that wasn't the homecoming that I was expecting after a vacation. Yeah, I think nutjob is the right word to describe that dude, OP. And honestly, I just don't understand some people. Like OP said, no accident was caused, so maybe just move on with your day, sir. Like, there's no need to follow that person and get all aggressive about it. Thankfully, there were cops there to de-escalate the situation because we've all seen those road rage videos gone horribly wrong, right? And there's definitely no need for it to get that crazy. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /IDontWorkHereLady. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/entitledpeople episode, where psycho Karens are thinking they're invincible because they know the owner of a store. It's such a ridiculous episode, so go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.